Tennessee, you get all kinds of stuff in your wool up there. And then they get wet and then they fall down. And when they fall down and they try to get up, they can't get up. And if that sheep lays there long enough, there are gases that will build up in that sheep that will kill that sheep. And the only way for that sheep to get up when it's cast, and I call it knocked down, but is somebody to help that sheep get back up. And we have people that are cast, spiritually speaking. And the only way that they can ever get back up is not for us being ugly and critical and talking about them, is to go over and they need a hand up, not a kick down, right? They need a hand up. Let's help them get up. And so that, I think when we take heed to ourselves, it's going to make us more charitable to others. I think we ought to take heed to our attitude, have the attitude of Jesus. We ought to take heed to our example. You see, 1 Peter 5, 1-4 teaches that elders are to be examples to the church. And in every aspect of our lives. Here's another thing that Paul taught these elders to do to prevent or to avoid these problems is take heed to the flock. That's in verse 28. You see, and maybe I got ahead of myself on this, but nonetheless, we need to take heed to the flock. Everybody has certain needs. Everybody in this class this morning, everybody watching right now, has certain needs. Some of them are physical needs. There's not a person that doesn't have certain physical needs, such as food and clothing and shelter. And I learned by going to a foundation meeting on a foundation here in town and last week, and we helped a shelter down in Alberta that helps homeless people. And I learned that they've got if I remember the number, is 463 people that they have identified as being homeless in our county. Those people have some physical needs, don't they? They've got a lot of physical needs. They've got a need for shelter over their head, something to eat, and clothing to wear. And some of them have jobs. They work at jobs. They just don't have anywhere to live. They have nowhere to live. And I talked to maybe that's something we need to look at, and I'm going to try to get some more information from them. People have emotional needs. I'm going to tell you that there are certain times that I think that we need emotional needs. The church here at Summerdale is not, we're not unique, but we have a kind of a mixture. I think we're undergoing a change. We're getting younger instead of older, okay? And that's a good thing. That is a good thing. We're getting more young people come in, and I think that's because we've got a younger minister, and he's full of fire, and he's excited, enthusiastic, got such a good attitude. But if we're not, I forgot where I was going with this. Now, Terry, where was I headed with this? He doesn't have a clue. He's not your mind reader? No, he's not a mind reader, so he doesn't know where I was going with it. But what was my point over here? Oh, yeah, I know now. All of us have certain emotional needs. That we've got a lot of widows in this congregation. And as far as I know, just one widower, and that would be Wayne. But we've got a lot of single people. These people have this is a group of people who have emotional needs. Years ago, I had to give a series of lectures at a summer series I had at Freed-Arteman College. That was the biggest bummer I ever been in my life because I only had 2 people attend my class. But I had to talk about changing relationships in the home. All the people there were families. They had mothers and daddies and babies. So nobody wanted to come to hear about that. But I had to do a lot of reading and studying. I couldn't tell you how many books I read and how much study I put into it. And it was a good thing because I learned so much. And I learned that widows, years after the death of their spouse, and this is a case where someone has experienced a divorce as well, they suffer emotionally from it. I learned that even 5 years after the death of one's husband, some women still feel guilty that they're living off of the Social Security that he earned. See, some of these wives have stayed at home, been a homemaker. And so, well, there are a lot. So I always take, when I was a local preacher, I'd take November and December to preach a lot on things that would help us with emotional, when you've had we've had people to lose children. I know that when Darrell and Marion Thompson were here, maybe you didn't know it, but they had a 15-year-old son murdered at the skating rink in Montgomery. It was right next door to Fulton University. He had first day on his job. He got off work, boy murdered him, shot him. They were when they moved down here, and they were here for years and years. They were still dealing with that years after it happened. And we've got people in this church just like that. I won't name names here because Darrell wouldn't mind it, because I talk to Darrell all the time. He is my buddy, and he served as an elder here, and he and Marion were a wonderful, wonderful team as an elder and his wife. He was a true elder, but they suffered emotionally. And no doubt some of you are going through that right now. You've lost children, you've lost spouses, and it's hard. And there's some things that you forget. Some things you try to forget. There are some things you never forget. You never forget. Every day you get up, it's still there, right? And so they're emotionally, and elders need to be aware of that. And then another kind of need the church has that we need to be aware of is spiritual needs. And we have spiritual needs. And in hiring Eric, but this was the case with every young man that we talked to, there's one thing we told them we wanted them to do. And we wanted them at some point in their upfront time with our young people to give them lessons on apologetics. Why do we believe in God? Why do we believe the Bible? Why do we believe this? Why do we believe that? And I'll say to Eric's credit, he's already done that since he's been here. Taught one of the books that we got from the Apologetics Press. But we wanted them to teach them spiritual things, teach them the Bible. When they get into class, I know there's some frivolity that goes in classes. I understand all of that. But not the majority of the time. We've had that to happen in times past. The majority of the time just playing. But our children have got spiritual needs. And then we have to watch, elders have to watch for the needs of the church. And it's a serious thing when we fail to do that. Here's a third thing to do to avoid those dangers is make sure the flock is fed properly. That's what Paul said there, notice 28. He said, what did he say to do to the flock? Take heed yourselves, all the flock, over which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers to do what to the church? To shepherd the church, to feed the church of God, to tend the flock. I have to have in my mind a shepherd in ancient times out in the field, got his staff. Can't you just see that staff with that crook on the end of it? And out there in his long flowing robe, and he's out there tending the flock. What's he out there for? Can't they take care of themselves? Pardon? To keep them safe. To keep them safe. There's a lot of reasons for being out there. Feed the flock. That involves what we're doing right now. That's teaching, doesn't it? It involves teaching. Actually, let me say this. What would happen to a person if all they ate 3 meals a day all their life was turnip greens? Wasn't asking for that response now. Well, okay. That's not a very... I should have used a different food there, I guess. I asked for that. Oh, me. Sounds like experience to me, is what I think. Oh, but anyway, you just don't eat the same thing all the time. You need a balanced diet. I remember when I was a child, and they taught that in school. I don't know whether they still teach that in school or not. They should. A balanced diet. And the church needs a balanced diet of doctrine. They need it. And the elders need to see that we are properly fed. If you're not fed properly, I'm almost afraid to ask another question. Afraid to ask what the answer I might get. Oh, mercy. We have a good time. We're Christians. But improper feeding, improper tending can result in malnourishment. You see pictures on television. They're trying to raise money for children overseas, and most of them are bloated. They're bloated, and their limbs, instead of being normal size, about this big around, are smaller. All it is skin stretched over bones. They're malnourished. Yes, sir, Rick. Partial salvation? No, there's no partial salvation. We need to know all the Word. Jesus said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. But if you're malnourished, what else can it lead to? Yeah, you'll die. And I see reports. I don't know about the validity of reports, but I'm sure they're close to being true about all the people that die every day in our world from hunger. That's hard to conceive of people dying every day from hunger. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. I see videos of men sometimes teaching there, and I want to write. If I took all my time to write something about every one of them, I just had to quit what I'm doing and write all the time, because there's so much false doctrine being taught today. Then here's another thing. This number 4. We're to watch for the dangers, and that's in verses 27 through verse 30. He said, I cease not to warn night and day with tears. He said, I will constantly, and that will help prevent departure from the faith. And there are various dangers we need to avoid. Moral dangers. There are moral dangers, doctrinal dangers, and there's, I'll save that one for tonight. That's a good one for tonight. It starts with murmur. Okay. Then fifth number, in order to avoid the dangers that we talked about, respect the sufficiency of the Word of God, because it's the Word, verse 32, that builds us up. It's the Word that builds us up. And if what a man teaches is more than the Bible, it's too much. And if what he's teaching is less than the Bible, it's too little. We're to preach how much of the counsel of God? All the counsel of God. And I ever so often when I was a local preacher, I did this one time, and I I'm the old-fashioned preacher because I have filing cabinet. And I put my sermons in filing and file them away. I still have them, but they're the biggest mess you've ever seen in your life. That I've moved my office so many times that they're not in alphabetical order any longer. And at this stage, I don't think I'll change it. But I decided to try to see if I was being balanced as a preacher. And so I went through my files, and I found some of them that were about this thick. I found some of them about this thick. I found some that were that thick, and then I had another one on the same subject, that same thickness, and that told me I'd preached a lot on that subject, but there were some I didn't, so I tried to correct myself. The elders didn't bring me aside and say, we'd like for you to do this. So I tried to analyze what I was doing and do better. And I'm sure I could have improved after I tried doing better, but we need to do that. The church needs a balanced diet. And that's the way the elders here feel about it. Then finally, if we're going to avoid all those dangers, we need to learn to help people that can't help themselves. Now notice what he says in verse 35, and usually all we read is it's more blessed to give than to receive. But I want you to go back where he says you ought to support who? We ought to support people that are weak. And sometimes people are weak physically, I understand that. Sometimes people are weak spiritually. They're weak spiritually. And we need to support the weak. People that are down don't need to be a kick. They need somebody to give them a hand up. They need a hand up to help the helpless. Let me ask you, and I want you to be honest, and I don't want you to be timid, because I'm asking out of honesty. And what can the elders do here, Ben and I at this point, and then when we have some others to come in, they'll be a part of it as well. But what can we do as your elders, in your opinion, to help the helpless? You don't have to be timid because the elders are sitting here. And we won't take it as a criticism. We'll take it as a constructive suggestion. How about that? Yeah, that's right. We are Steve and Tammy get out and visit, and they take them some beautiful arrangement of flowers, and I wondered where all those were coming from, ladies. And I call them girls because we're the same age. I can call them girls if I want to, and they'd rather be called girls instead of what we usually call old people. But they make flower arrangements that Steve and Tammy will take. And I think that's so sweet of them to do that. And there's so many people that are doing things in the church we don't even know about. You probably didn't even know about that. And a lot of things being done people don't know about. But we can always do more. But we want to help the helpless. In the men's breakfast yesterday, it was suggested that we might, if I can remember some of the things, and I know them over time, but this is important for the elders to know, that we ought to do something to reach out to people in our community that have addictions. That there are people that are, if we don't reach out to the community, why will the community want to walk in our door? Well, I think there's so much we can do. Well, I see I better quit. Or I could start over because a lot of these didn't hear the lesson. They didn't hear that we start over 15 minutes. I can't do it in 15 minutes. So thank you all for being here. And next Sunday is our 15th back. I think everybody's going to be in the auditorium for Bible class.